Welcome to the most must-see podcast in pro wrestling history. Welcome to Mark's Side of the Ring. Our views, our opinions, our predictions, spoiler-free on all things AEW and WWE. I am your main Mark, Miguel Minetti, and alongside are my three co-hosts for this evening, Nick Fiorentino, Fred DeCourt, Arturo Custodian. What's going on, gentlemen?
What's happening?
What's going on?
We're doing well. We're doing well. And the reason we're doing well is we have our very special guest on here with us today. As you can see, the man that went toe-to-toe with Vince McMahon himself for 83 weeks, beat him in the ratings, Mr. Eric Bischoff. Eric, how are you doing today, sir?
I am just outstanding, gentlemen. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. We are so excited to have you on, Eric. I know I can speak for all four of us. We are lifelong wrestling fans. So we grew up during the peak of the Monday Night Wars, which I know you're extremely responsible for. And, you know, we look forward to diving into that a little bit later on in the show. But we do have a jam-packed agenda for everyone today, all of our fans around the world today. So we want to kind of just dive right in. And we're going to go with, obviously, the biggest topic of the week so far, and that's the fallout of the AEW Revolution pay-per-view. So I wanted to kick it off with Eric and ask you your overall thoughts on the ending and the match itself. So we had the explosion barbed wire death match between Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley for the AEW Championship. Eric, did you get a chance to see this match? And what were your thoughts on both the match itself and the overall ending?
Oh, I've regretted this for almost a week now. You guys are the first ones to ask me, and I knew it was coming, but I was hoping it wouldn't. Look, I think the match itself was great. You know, Moxley and Kenny Omega are two amazing performers, and you can't take anything away from their performance. That being said, I'm pretty sure the Shockmaster somewhere down in Florida is walking around giggling to himself. He might not giggle out loud, but deep down inside that big man, there's a little giggle going on. It's all kidding aside, I'm trying to make it as humorous as I can. Been there, done that, man. You know, it's got to be very disappointing. You can spin it, you can sugarcoat it, you can try to make chicken salad out of chicken shit all you want, but it just didn't come off. And I've always compared, and not always, but since I've been doing my podcast, 83 weeks, wherever you get your favorite podcast, I've always talked about, you know, how, in my opinion at least, a wrestling match should be like a good movie or a good television show or a good book or even a good infomercial, in that it has a story and it has a beginning and a middle and an end that's satisfying. The beginning and the middle is what brings you to that moment where hopefully, you know, the audience feels like, wow, I really got my money's worth. That was so entertaining. That was amazing. That was fun, whatever. And no matter how good the acting is in a movie, if the end of the movie sucks, or no matter how good the cast is in a television series, if the end of that series sucks, it kind of ruins everything and casts a shadow over all the good things, you know, that came before it. So I feel, you know, I have empathy. I've been there. I've done it, you know, and the one thing I will say is, you know, look, AEW tried something. They stepped outside of the, I hate to say stepped outside the box because it's been so overused, but they've stepped outside the wrestling paradigm as we know it. How's that sound? That sounds so freaking smart, right?
That does sound good.
It sounds so smart. You guys can steal that all you want. But they tried and it didn't work. But I will also say the only people who have never tried and failed are people that have never tried at all. Right. So I give them a lot of credit for trying something new, not so much credit for not doing a better job executing. It is what it is. There's no excuses. If you're going to do something like that, if you're going to try something, especially the way it was promoted, if you're going to paint that picture in promotion, you damn well better be able to execute it. And they didn't. And that's unfortunate. But they'll learn and they'll grow.
For sure.
What were your thoughts going into the match? Did you say to yourself it was definitely set up for failure, or what were you expecting, like your expectations before you saw it?
It's funny because I was down in Jacksonville, a couple days before and made an appearance on their show, along with Conrad Thompson, the co-host of 83 Weeks, wherever you can. Yes. Nice. Sorry for being such a whore, but I am.
That's a great show. What the hell? Why not?
Love it.
And I had to leave early. I was going to stick around for the pay-per-view, but I had other business that I had to take care of. So I left on Friday, and I texted Conrad and said, normally anybody that listens to my podcast, I won't plug it again, knows that I'm not a big fan of gimmick matches. I'm a big fan of great story. I'm a great fan of great character. But gimmick matches for the sake of a gimmick match with no real backstory, count me busy that night most of the time. But this time I told Conrad, I said, I got to check it out, because as much as I absolutely detest gimmick matches with no good backstory and no reason behind it, I've got to see this, because from a producer's perspective, I just had to see if they could pull it off.
Yeah, I think the buzz was there, right? And I know the four of us were talking about it, and I forget whose podcast, or maybe I heard it somewhere on Twitter or on social media, but somebody made a great point that we're in the middle of WrestleMania season, and somehow, some way, leading up until last Sunday, AEW is the number one thing people were talking about with the Revolution pay-per-view. So the hype was certainly there. I know, obviously, it was because of the combination of the main event match and the big reveal, which we're going to get into your thoughts in a little bit as well, too, about what your thoughts were of Christian being unveiled as the big reveal for AEW. But, when it comes to the execution itself, I don't know what people's expectations were, right? You're at a place where it's a match we probably haven't seen in, correct me if I'm wrong, probably, what's it been, 30 years, 25, 30 years since that match last took place. So,
and not in the U.S.
Right, in the U.S., right? So going into it, and with the technology and everything we know, and obviously the world being the way it is in 2021, I didn't know what to expect. I know, Fred, you were watching it with me. We were sitting together saying, we didn't know what to expect. Yeah, why don't you give your thoughts?
I expected more than what we got, but I think everybody watching expected to get more than what we got. But again, when you plug something like that, you can only go so far and only do so much. You're not going to actually blow somebody up on live television, at least not plan to do it. So I went in there knowing, okay, it'll be crazy, but it could only go so far. You can't let your imagination go completely wild, because you're in an arena with a wrestling ring. It's predetermined, but it's real in the sense that it's not a movie set. So my expectations were at a certain level, but they definitely did not get met at all, unfortunately. But again, like Eric said, they'll learn from it, they'll grow from it, and you learn more from your mistakes than you do your successes. So, I give them credit for trying something, like Eric said, and we'll see what they do next. If they try anything else that is a little, as Eric doesn't like to say, outside the box.
I think the biggest problem was with the match is, and I kind of agree with Eric in the sense that I'm not a huge gimmick match fan either, is we've seen so many different gimmick matches, and they've all evolved over the years, whether it be a Hell in a Cell, then a bigger Hell in a Cell, or, a basic ladder match that we've seen multiple times, WrestleMania 10, and even before that. And then all of a sudden we see these acrobatic moves that we've never seen before. Everything evolves. But when they showed the promo for this match, they showed what looked like legitimate explosions in the match. And in 2021, you can only, go down, because they're not going to have that kind of stuff. They're not going to risk their stars the way that they might have done it in another country 30 years ago. So I think they set themselves up for disappointment, but I don't think it's their fault necessarily. I think that us as fans did a bad job, not just with our expectations going into this match, but also our expectations going into Christian. I saw tons of comments and everything kind of shitting all over the idea of Christian being the special guy, but it's only because we filled ourselves up with these pipe dreams that, it's going to be Brock, it's going to be CM Punk, it's going to be John Cena. And realistically, we all knew it wasn't going to be any of those guys. So Christian, who, what did Big Show, what did Paul White say? The guy's a future Hall of Famer. The guy is, a great wrestler. A lot of fans enjoy his matches and enjoy him himself. So the Big Show didn't lie. It was a huge acquisition for them, but we as fans did a poor job of kind of dreaming bigger than what the expectations, ended up being.
I need to disagree with you on that. I don't think it's the fans' fault. I think it's the fault of the promotion. And there's an inherent risk of over-promoting or over-promising. This is what happened. AEW over-promised by virtue of the package that they use and the different promotions that you saw in the hype and the dialogue within the show itself. They built this thing up to be the next really big thing, right? And when you do that, you inherently put yourself at risk for under-delivering on those expectations. It's not the fans' fault that they fell for the promotion, or they bought into the promotion, or they believed the promotion. Yeah. You build anticipation is a powerful thing. It's one of the 5 most powerful elements in any good story or promotion. You have to build anticipation, get people to the point where they're almost on the edge of their seats and can't wait to push that button and buy that pay-per-view. And it takes a lot of stimulation and promotion and work to achieve that. But whereas a promoter, you need to really be careful is that you're not over-delivering and over-promising, because then you will have no option other than to disappoint your audience. And I think what they made 2 big mistakes. One is they created the illusion that this event was going to be something other than what they were able to produce, number 1. Number 2, they didn't have to blow anybody up. They didn't have to do that. You wouldn't have had to put talent at risk in order to have a finish to that match that would have been visually stimulating. The pyrotechnics and lighting and the combination thereof that exists today in television, and it doesn't have to only exist on a movie set, it can exist in live television, are such that a much better, albeit more expensive, but I don't think the expense was the issue in AEW, clearly. I just think it was beginner's bad luck in a way. They stepped into something that they'd never done before. There weren't enough people around them to kind of pump the brakes and say, whoa, wait a minute. We're making this sound like it's going to be one thing, but we don't really know if we can deliver that. Somebody should have pumped the brakes early on, and one of 2 things should have happened. Either manage the expectations a little better than they did, because they didn't. They left them go unmanaged, or make sure you can really execute, which they could have done. Lighting alone, you wouldn't have had to use explosives to create the illusion of an explosive. It's 2021, folks. I could do it in my backyard on the 4th of July if I wanted to. It was just a bad mistake. And talking about Christian, I think the two reasons that both the main event match and the Christian reveal was less than what I think AEW hoped for was the same reason. When you promote the next Hall of Famer, now technically you're right, man, you're absolutely right, Nick. That is true. They didn't lie. Subjective as that may be, but I think most people would agree that Christian definitely is at some point in his life going to be in the Hall of Fame, and he should be. He's an amazing performer and a great character. But you set up this big reveal. Kurt Angle was in there, as a possibility. And Kurt didn't help matters, by the way.
Oh, I know.
I saw that.
I mean, he had me for a minute. I was going, oh my gosh, Kurt, don't tell me. Oh, wow, that's going to be great. I was actually excited about it for, about a minute and a half. And I went, that ain't going to happen. But he had me. And I'm sure most people, and I know Kurt, I've worked with Kurt. I've been friends with Kurt for 20 years. So I was able to kind of go, that ain't going to happen after a few minutes of thought. But, fans don't have that relationship, can't kind of rationalize or digest it all. They're just going to go, holy shit, Kurt Angle. And why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? With the addition of Paul White, with the addition of Sting, with Chris Jericho from the very beginning, Miro, so many people from WWE. Why wouldn't you jump to that conclusion? In fact, it's very predictable that the audience would. And anybody that would have thought about that for more than a minute would have gone, wait, let's not overhype this, because then the reaction is going to be less than the promotion. You don't ever want that. You want to react. You want to over deliver, not under deliver, which is why, and I'm not here to give a lesson on this kind of thing, but I talk about it ad nauseum. It's free advice. I'm not sure why nobody's listening. They would have been better off just to bring Christian in as a complete surprise out of nowhere with no promotion. The reaction to Christian would have been tenfold what it was in a positive
you're right.
way.
You're right.
100%.
And you would not be, because you wouldn't have put him at risk. You wouldn't have put people in such a high state of anticipation that they felt let down. And the opposite would have happened. They would have expected nothing and got this huge surprise. And the long-term benefit to AEW and to Christian's character would have been a shit ton of momentum and goodwill, as opposed to, oh man, I thought it was going to be Kurt, or I thought it was going to be Brock, or I really wanted it to be Cena. It's not what you want, man. Take advantage of the opportunity to really genuinely not only surprise people for the sake of surprising them, but to over deliver their expectations. That's what works in every form of entertainment. And for some reason, people in wrestling feel the need. Oh, we got to promote it. We got to promote it. We got to promote it. No, the fuck you don't. No, you don't. But yeah, I don't know. Nobody's listening. So whatever, at least, you guys are listening to me, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, very good point. I think that's the naivete of AEW in that, they are a new company. But I mean, WWE has made mistakes with over promoting things as well. They're not immune to it by any means.
No, they invented that shit.
Yeah,
You're right.
They wrote a playbook on it.
Yeah, right. But yeah, I mean, they had, you as great as a performer as Christian is, I'm a huge fan of his. I was very happy to see him come back at the Rumble. But I mean, let's be honest, call a spade a spade. You have to know that he's not at the level of a CM Punk or Brock Lesnar, John Cena, somebody that his name was in the hat, as far as a possibility that people would team up with.
I don't know, man. I think Christian as a character, I think he's way more important than CM Punk. I know CM Punk is kind of like on the tip of everybody's tongue because he's, the mic drop guy, and he's kind of like the anti-corporate guy, and everybody loves that. They can relate to that. They feel that way deep down inside. They want to walk into their boss and, cut a promo on him and turn around and walk out. They want to do that. And I get that. But I think Christian as a performer, in terms of his potential and capacity and ability to have great matches with great stories, with a diverse, number of different performers in AEW, I think by far and away, Christian was an ideal choice. I just think he got dinged a little bit with over expectation and over hype.
I wanted to ask Eric, at any point leading up to those 4 days in between when Paul White made that announcement to Revolution on Sunday, did you think it could have been CM Punk, Lesnar, Cena at all?
No, and it was really funny is I could have asked, I was down there and I'm sure I would have gotten an answer. But I didn't want to know, that's how much I believe in surprises, because especially someone like me who's been in the business for 30 years or more and who has an opinion. And I look at wrestling now, and it's one of the reasons that I don't watch a ton of it anymore is because I don't watch it like a wrestling fan. I can't anymore. That part of me died, a long time ago. It didn't die, it just went dormant. At my age, you don't ever want to talk about any part of you dying. So
that's what Blue Chew's for, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, you do listen to the podcast.
I sure do.
3 weeks, wherever you get your favorite podcast. And a great deal on Blue Chew, by the way.
There you go.
I'm a double hooker. But I don't want to know because not knowing gives me at least a little bit of a perspective of a fan. Once I know something, I start breaking it down and analyzing it. And once you start breaking it down and analyzing it before you see it, you talk yourself out of a good moment. You can talk yourself out of enjoying something by being overly analytical before you even see it. So if I heard a conversation about it, I would walk away. I don't want to know because I wanted to kind of get a sense of what the general audience was how they were going to feel. And, when it was what it was, I was happy. Don't get me wrong. I was happy for Christian, first and foremost. I was happy for AEW, close second. I was happy for, a lot of the guys on the roster who are going to have an amazing talent to work with, number 3. But in terms of feeling satisfied that, wow, they really delivered on a big promise, I was underwhelmed. And it has nothing to do with Christian. It has everything to do with overhyping.
Yeah, I agree with everything. I think we all will agree with everything you're saying on that. I wanted to get one more thought going back to the explosion itself. I famously heard, I don't know if it was Dave LaGreca or maybe somewhere I saw it on social media, but somebody said that they don't believe Vince McMahon and the WWE would have made that type of mistake that AEW did because
no,
right.
No, they would not have. But again, WWE is, how old is WWE? Vince is like the 3rd generation promoter in his family. It's been around since the beginning of television time, and maybe before that. I'm not sure.
Close to 60 years they've been around.
Yeah. So they've had a few weeks to figure this stuff out. AEW is a brand new company. They're moving very quickly. There are experienced people within AEW, but collectively, there's a lack of experience at the top. Tony Khan doesn't have 60 years of experience in the wrestling business. He hasn't had this kind of failure, under his belt. Like Vince has failed, like I failed, like anybody that's going out there and promoted something really big and end up walking away feeling embarrassed by it. This is the first time it's happened to Tony. And I'm sure he'll learn from it. And he has the resources and I think the competitive nature within himself never to allow that to happen again. But no, it would not have. I guarantee you it wouldn't have happened in WWE. That explosion, they would have tested that explosion for weeks in a controlled environment with cameras to make sure that it looked the way they wanted it to look. They would have been shooting it from 300 different angles with cameras that I don't even know exist today, just to make sure that it looked the way they wanted it to look. But that takes time and money and, most of all, experience.
You think this is an easy bounce back for Khan and AEW? The two, I wouldn't say letdowns, but the whole Christian reveal and the explosion at the end?
Time will tell. I like to think so. I don't know Tony Khan real well. I've only interacted with him, briefly the 3 or 4 times that I've, been around him, and I did an interview with him. He's clearly a very intelligent individual. There's no question about that. Nobody can deny that. He's a very successful individual on his own, independent of whatever his family has achieved. There's no question about that. Does he have the personality, to look at this as a learning experience and make sure nothing like this happens again and kind of get a sense of perhaps maybe we under-delivered and overpromised? I think so, because most people would figure that out. But, they're also a young company that's moving at about 120 miles an hour in a 55 mile an hour zone. So you're bound to run over a stop sign and hit a fire hydrant every once in a while.
Yeah, I agree. I think time will tell on that for AEW. But I want to transition now to our next topic, which was the other big news of the week so far, and that's that WWE finally announced that ticket sales are going to be going on sale this upcoming Tuesday for WrestleMania. And, Eric, I want to kind of just jump right into it. Obviously, with COVID-19 and things being the way they are, what were your thoughts when you heard that it was going to be a 2-night extravaganza, and now they're finally only 3 to 4 weeks before showtime putting out ticket information? What are your overall thoughts on that?
A couple different thoughts. One is I'm just grateful as hell. Obviously I don't have a dog in that hunt, as they like to say out here in Wyoming, but I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day on this very subject, and we both agreed that we feel most happy for the talent. Yeah. Because until you've gone out and performed in front of a crowd, until you've learned your craft and learned how to really, and the great talent are artists at manipulating a crowd. You know, Hulk Hogan, The Rock, Steve Austin, you know, Ric Flair, John Cena. I mean, there are people, and there are others. I hate dropping names like that because you always leave somebody out. But, you know, you look at anybody who's been a consistent main eventer or in the top third of a roster, any roster, for the most part, they've learned their craft by getting the crowd to react. Now you have to go out and perform for a television audience without any connection at all. It would be like, I don't know what a parallel would be like. It would be like going out and putting, if you were Fleetwood Mac or the Rolling Stones, going out and trying to put on a concert with no crowd. And the crowd in wrestling is no different than a crowd in rock and roll. You need that connection, that energy that creates a whole different vibration and connects with the audience, even through the television. You know, if you don't have that, you're struggling. So I'm most grateful, not grateful, I guess. I'm most happy for the talent that are going to be able to get out there for the first time in over a year and actually perform in front of a crowd. It's going to be, I bet some of them are going to have tears in their eyes. I mean, they're going to be so happy. I would be. I just can't imagine going out there and cutting a promo the way I like to cut a promo, especially if you're someone like me who likes to improvise and feel that crowd and, you know, just look at somebody in the audience and know that you can pick that person out and have fun with them or get the audience to react the way you want them to by picking somebody out in the crowd and letting that just take on a life of its own. Those are all little things that you do when you have a live crowd. And for someone like me to go out there and cut a promo without a crowd, I'd rather get my teeth cleaned.
That's hard to pull, you know, hard to pull off with no crowd to get that emotion out and get it across the screen without feeding off the emotion of the people. You know, I give them credit for everything that they have done within the last year on both companies. I mean, AEW has had select people at shows for a few months now, but still, I mean, to be able to have
matches. That's not the same thing. It's not the same. And I can tell you from having been
there. You've been there. Is it? Yeah. Does it feel any different?
It's not the same thing. No. Yeah. That would be like, again, you using the Rolling Stones as an example. They're out there and they're trying to put on they're filming a concert with no crowd, and you've got, not taking it away of anything from the people that were there, but having some of the, you know, venue staff standing around, you know, watching. It's just not the same.
Yeah,
you know, it would normally friends and family of the maintenance crew, you know, come and watch the Rolling Stones. It's not the same.
If it was a normal show, it'd be like, my God, this crowd, there's nobody here. It's a, you know, empty house. You know, if it was normal.
Elvis Presley once said the most important part of any of his live shows was the audience.
Yeah,
I didn't make that up. I've been thinking about that since the day I first promoted something back in 1988.
Right.
You know, you've got to have a crowd. It's in wrestling. The crowd is the third man or woman, I guess, in the ring. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if you don't have the third character, that's the way to say it to be politically correct. I knew I'd find a way. I got to write that down so I don't forget later on when I do my YouTube show. Stay politically correct. But the crowd is really
controversy creates cash.
Yeah, it used to. Now it gets you canceled like a son of a bitch.
Controversy creates cancellation.
Yeah, I got to write a new book. Follow up.
Have you had a chance, Eric, to view the Thunderdome? Have you got to see it in person?
No.
Okay.
No, I haven't. They don't invite me to any parties anymore, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sure they will.
No, I mean, I've watched it on television, you know. But
it's certainly an improvement from those performance center shows in the beginning of those were tough. They were some hard shows to get through.
But if you remember, that was during an era where, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, there were no sports on. I was watching two people simulate Madden football games just because we were dying for something. So even though there were no fans, it was the only game in town. It was the only competitive thing on television during most of it. So looking back on it now, it's like, I can't believe I watched that. If they tried to do it now, it would be terrible. But at the time, nothing's on. I loved it at the time, but no, it's got to be tough for a performer.
Have you guys watched Robot Wars?
I have, yeah.
That's like the hottest show on TV right now because they got a fake crowd. Well, they got a crowd, but it's a studio audience that's actually reacting to what's going on. Yeah. And it's kind of, I end up watching it just because I feel like watching something with a crowd.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Robot Wars.
Yeah.
I wanted to get your perspective, Art, as a fan, right? So, Eric, myself, Art, Fred, God willing, we're going to be going to WrestleMania in Tampa. Art, what are your thoughts on it being 2 nights this year and paying potentially full admission as if you're paying for 2 separate WrestleManias? I know we talked about this offline, but what are your thoughts overall on that?
Well, yeah, I was going to mention the offline talk that we had was I wasn't even thinking about the price tag, whether it's going to be 2 separate full price admissions or if it's 1 discounted combo, which I believe hopefully is true. But I'm excited to go for a weekend that's pretty much cut into 1 night, now split into 2. We're used to the SmackDowns, we're used to the Monday, the Raw right after WrestleMania, we're used to the takeovers, the Hall of Fame. So now that we have at least 2 events, it's something to fill in the weekend where, you'd only have Sunday night.
And guys, I can tell you, I may not be at this WrestleMania, but I've been at previous WrestleManias. And WrestleMania weekend, at the location, whether you get to go to WrestleMania or not, it's just fun as hell.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, so many wrestling fans come from around the world, to be a part of it. And you can make friends and influence people and have all the fun you could possibly have and not even go to WrestleMania. Going to WrestleMania is like the Holy Grail.
Right.
But even if you couldn't go, I would encourage people to go hang out for the weekend because you'll have a blast.
Just be around wrestling fans for the weekend in the city. There's a buzz, right? Yeah.
Yep. And besides, Tampa's kind of nice this time of year.
Oh yeah, better than we're in New Jersey, so better than New Jersey anyway.
Sure.
Yeah, no offense, but just about everywhere is better than
Hey, it was 70 degrees today, and it's going to be tomorrow too. So we're
nice today, but ironically.
And Eric, I'm from Atlanta. I'm originally from New Jersey. I just moved out to Roswell, right outside of Atlanta. So I know you're familiar with the area, but it's beautiful weather down here.
Yeah, Roswell's a great community, actually.
Art, where did we meet Eric for WrestleCon? Was it in San Francisco?
No, actually, it was Legend of the Ring in Monroe, New Jersey. I think you did a meet and greet, Eric, in Monroe, New Jersey. This is probably 20. It was a while back. Is that what you're asking me to go?
No, actually, you posted something on Twitter today, and I think I saw it.
That was me.
So
to your point, though, Eric, that was the WrestleMania. That was the second one they did at MetLife Giant Stadium. And at that point, for me, I can't sit in a seat for 8-9 hours. So I didn't go to WrestleMania. I went to 28 and 29. But I went to the WrestleCon. I mean, I met you. I met Bret Hart, met Christian, met Jake Roberts, met all of my heroes as a kid. I had more fun, doing that than I probably would have had sitting in the seat for 9 hours watching wrestling. I like having the parties at home, but that's me. But it's all about the experience, and it was great to meet you at that time. You're one of the nicest guys. Sometimes I've been burned meeting some of my favorite stars or favorite heroes in different various sports, but I'll say this, the professional wrestlers that I've met or the people from that world have always been some of the nicest people I've ever met.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, there are always exceptions, but I think they're very rare. In wrestling, I think wrestlers learn, especially the guys that you mentioned, like Brett and Jake and, guys that are veterans and have been around, and they came up during a different era. And having respect for your fans is what gets you over. It's not like sports stars really don't care about their fans. They really don't. They care about their paychecks. They care about their agents. They care about a lot of things, but their fan base is not all the time, but too often way down the list of things to care about. Whereas in wrestling, if you don't get people to love you, or in my case, hate you, but love to hate you. But if you don't connect with your audience, if you don't give to your audience, they will turn on you on a dime. And I think because of that, it's inherent. And besides that, guys like me, and I'm sure I won't speak for anybody else that you mentioned, but I'm pretty sure I'm right when I say they're grateful for that opportunity to still be relevant and get out and have conversations with people that are still excited to see them. I know I am. It's a big deal for me. You know, I don't like the travel that goes along with it. I don't like being away from my wife and my dog and my own coffee maker and my own bed. So the travel sucks. But once I get there, I have a blast.
Yeah, I mean, I could say from experience, I've had the pleasure of meeting you a few times. Most recently, Art and I were on Jericho's cruise last year, right before the pandemic began. And we were sitting at the bar with you for like a good 30, 45 minutes just shooting the shit. And honestly, you were one of the nicest guys. We were just talking about wrestling and everything that's going on in the world. So,
and thanks for saying that. And I'm really glad you had a good experience. There have been people that have sat with me at a bar and not had a good experience, but usually they're assholes. So it takes on a different life. But,
right.
You know, that was another example, you know, for someone like me to be able to go out and, you know, be around people that are so passionate about wrestling and just love to talk about it. How do you not have a good time doing that? I don't know. Like I said, there's exceptions, but I would say 98% of the people that I ever see out there, whether it's a convention or a signing or a Comic-Con or whatever it is, they're veterans that are no longer in the business. They're grateful, you know, to be able to still matter.
Was that your first experience, Jericho's cruise, or did you do the first one too?
No, that was the first time I was ever on a boat bigger than a fishing boat.
And what'd you think of it overall?
I thought it was really well organized. It was fun.
We had a blast on it.
I had a lot of fun, you know, like meeting with guys like you and talking to people. I'll be honest. And this is an individual thing. I'm a little claustrophobic. And that's not right. I'm not claustrophobic. I just don't like small places and big crowds. I like talking to people, and that's probably why, you know, while we're sitting at the bar having a beer, that's a very easy thing for me to do because I don't feel like the world is closing in on me. But if you get me in a crowded room, you know, I can't even remember. It's been decades since, maybe 3 or 4 of them, since I walked into a restaurant or a bar or a nightclub that had more than 15 people in it. Usually if I stick my head in the door and there's a big crowd, I'm looking for the dive bar down the street, you know, or I'm looking for the mom and pop pizza shop with 6 people in it, you know, as opposed to a big event. So, but that's just a personal thing. I love the Bahamas. I'd never been to the Bahamas before. I'd never been on a cruise ship before. You know, Chris's event was so well organized and everybody had so much fun. I didn't come across anybody that was like, man, this isn't that much fun. Everybody I talked to was like, wow, I can't wait to do this again next year. So how could you not have fun in that environment?
Yeah, we didn't even know what to expect going in, but I mean, we walked away, right, Art? I mean, we had
definitely, exceeding my expectations, definitely. I mean, all the events, we walked in with a blank slate. We had no idea what to expect, but everything was so well executed. The fans, everyone was just having a great time. It was fun to be among people that, you know, share your common interest.
And you just proved our point from early in the discussion. It exceeded your expectations.
Yeah, I wish I did now with hindsight 2020, knowing what was going to happen a couple months down the road.
Well, it was the last vacation we snuck in before everything started getting shut down.
Hey, well, it looks like things are going to open up, man.
Yeah,
I mean, vaccines are flowing like water from a fire hydrant.
Yeah,
people are happy. Texas is opening up. Oklahoma is opening up. Everybody, you know, New York is going to let 50% occupancy in their restaurants. Yeah. I think Connecticut's 100%.
Jersey's going to 50% for the restaurants and gyms and things of that nature. So we're getting there, slow and steady.
We're coming back. Another couple months, and we'll be right back to where we were.
Yeah, that's right. I had the pleasure to meet you actually in October at a signing, and at first when I heard about it, I was like, "Wait, is this real? Is it?" I didn't know it was a new place. It was in Jersey called Rip and Run Collectibles in Butler, New Jersey, and I was like, because it was like the first one since the pandemic, and I didn't know if this was real. I called them and I said, hey, wait, he's going to be there physically, not a virtual signing? And they said, yeah, no, he'll be here. So I said, okay. So I made the drive, and sure enough, you showed up. I was like, because I was unsure with the pandemic, you know, there hadn't really been signings or anything. And to my delight, you showed up, and you were a great guy, you know. So another positive story for Eric, being a good guy to the fans.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. And I went there. I did that as as a thank you to the promoter who I've been working with for a while now, a couple of years. Actually, he's the first promoter that ever booked me for a signing like that or a convention. Kevin Nasta, by the way, 365 Promotions.
Oh yeah, that was right. That was the promotion that ran it out of the
super guy, and just he's him and his staff. I love them. They treat me really well. And he called me and asked me, and I was like, hell, I don't want to get in hot water here, but the whole mask thing is kind of a joke to me from the very beginning.
Well, that was the other thing. They said they let us take them off. I was like, okay, cool, for the picture.
Yeah, it was like, Dr. Fauci, mask, no mask. It's like the character in Karate Kid, wax on, wax off. This was like mask on, wax off.
Yeah.
They work. No, they don't work. You don't need to wear them. No, you should wear 2 of them. It's like, oh, fuck you. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm just going to go with my gut.
Right. But it was great. It felt so normal. I remember that was like the thing I took away from it. Was one of the most normal things I got to experience again, since it. So thank you for showing up and doing it.
Yeah, and it was a heck of a crowd, right? I mean, people turned out. It was a lot of fun. There was a really great Italian sandwich shop in Delhi, like right around the corner. And I had some of the best Italian deli I've had in a long, long time. So,
oh, nice.
Hell yeah, to New Jersey.
Italian deli in Jersey. Can't go wrong.
Right.
No.
Do you plan on attending WrestleCon? Curious to see how that's going to go with their signings.
I haven't gotten invited, so no, probably not.
If you do get invited, though, you'll be there?
It depends. It just depends. I'm not trying to be a smart ass or play coy. It just depends. When I do these things, it's important that I know who the promoter is, who else is going to be there, where the venue is, that kind of stuff. Sure. I'd like to go, but if I don't go, I won't be banging my head on the curb. I'll be outside playing in the back 40 with my dog.
Want to get your last thought before we move on to the fan questions around WrestleMania weekend itself. Do you think that WWE can get away with the fact that it's 2 nights and they'll probably be charging full admission for both nights with no confirmed matches 3 weeks or 4 weeks to go, besides obviously the main event of Roman Reigns versus Edge and Sasha versus Bianca Belair? Do you feel like they can get away with it this year because fans are just going to be so excited, like us, just to go to an event, the first event in over a year with actual human beings?
Oh, they'll not only get away with it, it will be a huge success, in my opinion. Here's what WWE has done over the last several decades. Is the brand is so powerful. It's a little bit like the Super Bowl. Truth is, you don't really give a damn who's in the Super Bowl. You just want to go to the Super Bowl.
True.
Yep.
For the most part.
Yeah.
You just want to be a part of the experience. They meaning WWE, has done such a phenomenal job of building up the WWE brand first and foremost. But WrestleMania it's the shit. And people want to go just to be a part of that experience. I think the card is important. Obviously, the better the stories associated with the card, the better the television leading up to WrestleMania. All of those things, have an impact on the overall success in the eyes of, many people. But it's not why people go, in my opinion. People go to be a part of the moment. So I don't think that the fact that the tickets are just now going on sale, they'll sell out. I don't know how many tickets are going to have available. Maybe you guys do. Whatever it is, they'll be sold out in probably 3 minutes or less.
Absolutely. Sell itself.
Regardless of the price.
Yeah.
They'll be throughout 3 minutes for a 2-night event. It's probably a pretty rich ticket. It may take 7 minutes. Okay. My point is it'll sell out. People will be excited. People will walk away having had a great time because WWE knows how to put on an event like that. And even if, you're going into some of these matches and they may feel a little cold because they haven't been hyped and promoted, that's a possibility, but you won't care once you get there. And in fact, again, let's circle back to the beginning of this conversation. WWE is they didn't plan it this way, but they're now currently in a position where they're going to underhype. They have no choice. They're out of daylight. There's not enough time for them if they wanted to overhype it and overhype the matches. you really don't have enough time to do it. So they're going to do the best they can. And then they're going to over deliver, and people are going to walk away going, wow, that was the best WrestleMania ever. Well, really it wasn't, but it kind of felt like it because it's been a year since you've been to a live event, and they over delivered on what they promised. It's a key fundamental of retail sales or marketing or branding is, under promise, over deliver.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. Oh, no.
No, yeah, I was going to say, I think nevertheless, it's going to be a tremendous event no matter what WWE ends up putting on the card. I think a lot of fans, I know the three of us that are, knock on wood, God willing, going, as long as we can get tickets, we're very excited to go. And, it's going to be a tremendous show because, to Eric's point, we've been to many WrestleManias and they've always delivered. They've always put on a spectacle. So definitely very, very much looking forward to the card.
So why do you suggest, Miguel, that you might not get a ticket? Why is that?
Well, I mean, I'm telling myself we're going to get the tickets, but they go on sale on Tuesday. So you're saying they're going to sell out in 3 to 7 minutes. You're buying 30,000. If they're selling,
it's already a hot ticket.
Because I believe that it will be a very hot ticket and will go. Because you have taken, if you were normally going to fill it up with 65 to 70,000 fans, and now you've cut that down to, say they even allow 30, and the talk is 25, but say it is 30. That's still less than half. And WrestleMania usually sells out eventually anyway, and most of the tickets sell out within the first few days. So you cut. It's going to be a hot ticket. It's going to be
now. You guys are too young to remember this, but if you watch some documentaries, you'll see what I'm talking about. But there used to be a nightclub in New York City called, Studio 54.
Oh, right. Yeah.
They kind of created the whole velvet rope marketing theory, where you put a velvet rope outside your club, put a couple big bouncers out there, and you only let a select few people in. All of a sudden, everybody wants to be one of those select few.
Yeah.
If they wouldn't have put the velvet rope around there and the two bouncers standing outside picking people would have gone, whatever, it's just another club. But you put a velvet rope around it and make it hard to get into, and all of a sudden people would, kill their next door neighbor for their ticket. So
it's true. Yeah, the smaller, and also, like if there's a small venue, I remember a couple years ago, they did the Raw 25, and they did a portion of it at the Manhattan Center, and that was like maybe 1,000 to 1,500 fans, if that. And I was lucky to get a ticket, but I remember the demand was so crazy for that show because it was so limited. But if it, in a normal arena setting with 20,000, there's a demand, but it's not as you didn't get something as hard to get.
Well, you're not afraid you're going to get left out.
Right.
And that's the psychology behind the velvet rope theory, is if you're afraid you're going to get left out of the club or the group or the event, whatever it may be, you're going to work extra hard to get hold of that ticket. So
100%.
That's our goal.
Let's move
Eric,
on.
I figured we were going to jump into the fan questions, and I have one. And truth be told, we've been arguing for 3 weeks now, maybe 4, actually since the Rumble, about Bill Goldberg coming into the main event picture at the Royal Rumble versus Sting and his entrance into AEW. And spoiler alert, I'm asking him because he agrees with me, because I've heard him answer this question before. But for our viewers, Eric, if you don't mind, why does Sting work for AEW and Goldberg doesn't for WWE?
Oh, there's more than one reason. I think the way WWE utilizes Bill Goldberg as that, once or twice a year, legend, because that's what Bill is at 54 years old. As powerful as he is, as great a character, I'm not taking anything away from Bill. I'm more amazed at Bill now than I was 15, 20 years ago. The fact that he can still go in there at 54 looking as great as he looks, I think he looks better. There's something about that grizzled, old, tough guy, maybe because I'm old. and it's aspirational for someone like me, right? It just works as a character. It's one of the reasons why I love Denzel Washington, as a badass when he's a character in a movie, because I can relate to that. But unfortunately, the way WWE uses Bill And part of it is because, Bill's limitations and what Bill wants, not only is not his physical limitations necessarily. Bill doesn't want to be a full-time wrestler. Bill doesn't want to come in and work an 8-week program. I don't know that as a fact. I'm assuming it, and I could be wrong. So don't anybody quote me that's listening to this. But I'm assuming that it's not really on Bill's radar. I'm assuming that it's probably not in WWE's financial budget to be able to work a guy like Bill in, for a 6 or 8 week program twice a year. It would get a lot more expensive. So between those two factors, what are you left with? Bring them in, drop them in from a helicopter, have them have a big match, get some hype, and go home. Fans don't really dig that. Fans, whether they articulate it or not, and usually they articulate it with their remote control, unfortunately, fans want story. They want good story. They don't want story that's nothing more than an excuse for a match, which is what 90 some odd % of what I see in today's programming is. It's called a storyline, and you can refer to it as a story, but it's really just a story that's cobbled together to make an excuse to have the match, which what they're really doing is booking matches and coming up with a storyline afterwards, or just filling in a little bit of story to support it. But fans really want a great story. They want McMahon and Austin. They want the NWO early on. They want Sting and Hogan all the way up until the finish. They want they want that level. They want that level of engagement and to suspend their disbelief and to be excited about what they see. That's what they really want. And when you drop a guy, whether it's Bill Goldberg or Undertaker or John Cena or The Rock or anybody else, yes, you get that momentary, and depending on who that is, obviously different people are going to get different reactions. But no matter who it is, if you drop them in and off a helicopter for one special match, it's back to the same old, same old. And it's not what fans really want. Now, Sting is being worked into the story. He's a full-time part of the show. Or I'm presuming he will be. I didn't even, I talked to Sting a little bit while I was there, and we didn't get into business at all. It was more social and personal, but I'm pretty sure I'm right when I say Sting is going to be a much more visible part of the AEW program than Goldberg will be next year when they use them again. If they do. I don't know that they will, but if they did.
It's interesting you say that. Just a quick follow-up to that, because, to your credit, obviously I'll give you as much credit as possible, but you built Goldberg from the ground up, right? The whole storyline of him going with the undefeated streak, 173-0 before he took his first loss. To me, he's as close as box office as Brock Lesnar, right? So I'm surprised to hear you say, Eric, that you feel that it's just one of those things every time they plug in Goldberg that a lot of people kind of, shit on it, for lack of a better term, to say, kind of the same thing. Because I feel like that's not the case with Brock Lesnar. When Brock comes back, I feel there's that genuine excitement.
Well, here's another factor, and I wasn't going to bring this up, but you provoked me. Damn you. Bill doesn't have the ability to have the kind of matches that an Undertaker could, or Brock Lesnar could, or a John Cena could if he were to come back, or a Rock even, who's been out of the ring for a long time. These guys have the aforementioned talent, not these guys, the aforementioned talent have, even though they've been out of the ring for a while, have the skill sets that they developed for decades prior that they can kind of tap into. Yeah, they got to modify it a little bit. They got to tone some stuff down. They got to camouflage a little here and a little there, but they could go out and have a 20-minute match. That would be a beginning and a middle and an end, and have a great finish or conclusion, whatever you want to call it. Bill's got, 4 moves and a great look.
Yeah. It gets old fast. Yeah.
Where are you going to go with it? How are you going to what are you going to do with that other than a spectacle, like a special match? What can you do with someone who is, not only 54 years old, but at the peak of his career had a skill set that was limited to about 6 or 7 different things? It's kind of hard to go out there and have a match because, your ability to go out there and have a great match. That's why people like Ric Flair, and Chris Jericho is another one, a contemporary performer that falls into this category. They can go out and have a match with just about anybody and make them look good. I mean, they can. That's what makes them so special.
Yeah.
But, with a guy like Bill, it's kind of hard to do anything that we haven't already seen a lot of already. And that's another reason why fans feel, yay, Goldberg. Oh, it's Goldberg again.
Yep.
I think that's a fair point. I know Fred has a question for you, so Fred, I'll let you kind of go next with it.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to ask you, going back to when you last went to go work for WWE, I know you've said on your podcast that you'll probably never work there again. Not to get into your business or what actually happened, but just curious, what made you so adamant that you'll never work there again? And do you, maybe you feel that way about backstage, never having a creative role like that again, but do you see yourself doing a one-off television appearance as the character Eric Bischoff, similar to like what you've done recently on AEW? So it's
I
kind
was
of
just going to say, I did one last week.
Right. But on WWE TV.
Oh, hey, newsflash. I don't think it's a secret, but WWE was out at my house this past Saturday filming.
I didn't know that.
It was, it's something for the network, which I've
very
done.
cool. I'm glad to see you're still doing business with them.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Let me dispel any misconceptions. I have nothing but respect and admiration and friendship for Vince McMahon, and not to suggest that we're close friends. We're not. I don't socialize with him. I don't call him up and shoot the shit with him. But if I happen to see him in a restaurant or in an air, not that I would see him in an airport because he's got his own Gulfstream, but we'd sit down and have a great conversation. Nothing ever happened. So there's no hard feelings whatsoever. When I said, I would, first of all, I hardly ever say never, but if I did, it's because I learned a lot about myself, when I went back to WWE this last time. There's two equally influential parts of my brain. There's the side of me that wants to go out and conquer. There's a side of me that wants to go out and create. There's a side of me that wants to go out and break new ground. That half of my brain is still very much alive and active. But there's another side of my brain that's getting a little bit more influence over the last few years that says, man, just enjoy what you have. Enjoy where I've worked hard. I've worked for 30 some odd years to be able to have a home exactly where I have a home.
Right.
And I've got an amazing wife and I've got a great life and I'm healthy. And there's a lot of things that I love doing. And I don't think I could convince the other side of my brain to go, yeah, but just forget about all that. And you're going to be working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and, getting texts and phone calls at 3:00 in the morning when you thought you were going to be sleeping. That part of me, I got to talk that part off the ledge because he'll jump. It's possible.
Right.
But I have to kind of take inventory and decide, what do I really want to do the most? And right now I'm in a position where, I'm doing a lot of fun stuff. I'm involved in a movie for Netflix that I'm producing. The project is very much alive. I'm involved with Conrad Thompson in the podcast. I'm getting him involved with Conrad Thompson in his mortgage business. I've got a couple other projects that are really, really exciting going on. So I have all these things going on that kind of feed that part of my brain that wants to go out and just kick ass.
Right.
And I get to go outside and play with my dog as soon as we're done doing this. So I'm freaking happy right where I'm at.
You get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
One thing I also want to say, for my money, you were the greatest general manager character in the history of general managers, commissioners, presidents. I don't give a shit what the character title was. You were, Mick Foley, great. William Regal, great. But you, bar none, the best. Your run as Raw general manager to this day is one of my favorite parts.
I agree.
Of that show. And I regret to this day, July 15th, 2002, Monday Night Raw was in East Rutherford, New Jersey at the Continental Airlines Arena when you made your historic debut, which to this day I still think is a top 10 Raw moment, if not top 5. And I'm so mad that I wasn't there that night to be live in person, because that was when Vince and you hugged, or you and Vince, just incredible, absolutely incredible.
Yeah, that was a fun night, and all the anticipation. We talked about this earlier. It all kind of goes back. It's with the common denominator in professional wrestling, and with the fans that love it. It's all about the anticipation, and anticipation. It's inherent in us, I think, as human beings, but in our culture, you look forward to your first day of school. Well, some kids do. You look forward to getting your driver's license. You look forward to, going to the prom. You look forward to graduating. You look forward to turning 21 so you can go get a cocktail and chase women. You look forward to your first real job. You look forward to you look forward to Christmas. You look forward to your birthday. You look forward to this. You look forward to that, or Hanukkah, or whatever it is you look forward
WrestleMania.
to. WrestleMania. So you're conditioned in this country to look forward and anticipate the next big thing in your life. And the anticipation leading into that for me personally, because it was a big secret, right?
Yeah.
Nobody knew. A small handful of people in WWE knew, and even a smaller handful knew on my end of the equation. My attorney and my wife were the only two, my kids. But that was it. So again, perfect example, going back. It all hangs on the beginning. The end hangs on the beginning. Remember that. You heard it here, right here. The end of this podcast will hang on the very beginning of this podcast, which was WWE did a great job of creating hype and anticipation and over-delivering.
Yep.
If they would have created that same hype and anticipation and brought out Mick Foley, or brought out William Regal, or brought out Teddy Long, or brought out whoever else has had that role, and it has nothing to do with them, they would have been good. They would have been great, but it would not have been the same thing, because it was a moment where WWE over-delivered, which is why people are still talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I got to ask you, was Booker, you may have answered this before, but was Booker's reaction a shoot?
In the sense that it was, he wasn't prepped.
Okay.
He didn't know.
Wow.
Oh, so wow, that is, yeah. I always wondered that myself, if he knew.
Yeah, actually, I never asked him. I'm just assuming, but I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing. I mean, Booker T, and Booker's a good friend of mine, by the way, and so is his brother Stevie. Booker's also enough of a pro with a great instinct. If he knows there's this, who's the general manager, big surprise, who's the general manager, big surprise, and then he sees me walking through a locker room, nobody would have to say to him, hey, Booker, look surprised.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
Booker, this is what we want you to do. Now, don't make your eyes that big. No, make them a little bit. No, turn your head a little bit to the left. Yeah, perfect. That you wouldn't have needed to do that. His instincts would have taken over before his thought process would have.
He sold the shit out of that. I thought that was one of the greatest reactions I've ever seen. That's why I thought it was a shoot, because his face was the pure raw shock on his face. I was like, oh wow, he definitely, at least in my opinion, he didn't know beforehand. So
no, and it's one of the reasons why Booker T is such a great performer, is great instinct. Great performers have great instincts. Great athletes have great instincts. Great anything has great instincts.
You have to, yeah.
Sure. I know Art has a question. I'll let Art go next, and then we'll wrap.
Art's been so quiet. He's just been sitting there going, shit, are you guys ever going to let me talk?
Come on. All in. So that's like I said, I'm a big fan. So, hearing you being on here with everybody, it's been great. But I did want to ask something you mentioned earlier. So you mentioned WWE Network is recently at your house filming. And last year, the NWO was supposed to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Now that we just heard that the Hall of Fame this year is going to be a combination of both 2020 and 2021. Do you see yourself as someone WWE will reach out to induct the NWO? If not, who do you feel would be, worthy enough to induct the NWO? If not yourself?
Well, I think they've already inducted or nominated, or what do they call it when they put you up for the Hall of Fame, but they don't quite induct you yet? The formal induct, you've been nominated. We'll call it nominated, like it's an Academy Award. I mean, they've already done that for the NWO, so I don't think it needs anybody else. I don't think they.
Oh, is that right? Oh, I didn't know that piece. Okay.
Well, I mean, they did last year. They announced Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Hulk Hogan and X-Pac. And I think that's a great representation of the.
No, I meant to. My question was as far as induct them into the actual ceremony, as far as to bring them on stage and to.
Oh, like you did for DDP.
Oh, well, that's another conversation. Well, they haven't called and asked me to do that. So, as far as who else could do it, I think it'd be great to hear Vince McMahon do it.
Yeah,
wouldn't that be awesome to have Vince McMahon?
He's got to turn in his chair before he does.
No, I wouldn't go there because that'll bring back bad memories. But wouldn't it just be like irony in a way?
it'd be great to hear what his.
And the dirt sheets would say Vince takes a shot at Bischoff by inducting them into the NWO. Right?
Who cares what the dirt sheets say? It's just ridiculous.
Fuck Dave Meltzer, right?
There you go. I got the T-shirt. Thanks, Bruce.
I'll say this. You don't have to say it. I'll say it. If you're not the person that gets the phone call to induct them into the Hall of Fame, I mean, I don't think there's anybody more deserving than you to induct them. And I know I'm not the only one who thinks that, or I'm sure there's millions upon millions of people that think that. I mean, I don't know how they induct the NWO and not have Eric Bischoff induct them into the Hall of Fame would just be a travesty, in my opinion. And I know we're putting you over again, and you already said yes to the show, so we appreciate that. But no, I mean,
usually I require this kind of adulation, and you guys would have to put me over for.
There you go. It's just a joke to me that you wouldn't be the person considered to it. So if anybody from WWE is watching this, and I doubt they are, from 4 marks. And Eric Bischoff, it should be Eric Bischoff inducting the NWO into the Hall of Fame. I mean, it'll be a special moment for them anyway, not to take anything away from them. I've met all of them. They're all super nice, to go back to that original point. But yeah, it should be you.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, but I'll tell you something else. The Hall of Fame is probably my favorite part of WrestleMania weekend, to be honest.
Mine too.
I'm so bummed it's not going to have fans this year, but
mine too. I love the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
but I love watching it on television too. And I've only been to 1 or 2 in person, maybe 3, can't remember anymore. And in person is fine too. But you can sense when you're watching it that the emotion that you're seeing, you're not just seeing it, you're feeling it because it's real. It's genuine. And I'm just as thrilled to be sitting at home watching it as I am to be there participating in it. So don't feel bad for me, guys.
No, I mean, you have to be like a proud father knowing that it was your creation. So your creation is getting inducted into Hall of Fame, whether you're part of it or not.
Absolutely. And that's really how I feel.
Yeah.
My, and I think a lot of this is just, time, time, the old saying, time heals all wounds. It's not a wound, but over time, I'll speak for myself. I look at things differently now. And whether I'm a part of something or not, if I see something that's good, that makes me feel good, I'm happy to see it. And I don't get, bitchy about it or whiny about it or start tearing things down, whether it has something to do with me or not. Mm-hmm. I wish wrestling fans should be careful about generalizing. I wish those wrestling fans that feel the need to be negative and to dissect and tear things down and be tribal in their approach to everything. And a lot of that is, I think the beginning of all that started with dirt sheets in a way. Everybody wanted, not everybody, but the people that wrote those damn things wanted to be an expert. And, they had to create their own controversy. They had to create their own back and forth. And when you start analyzing and picking things apart that are not meant to be analyzed or picked apart, they're just meant to be enjoyed. If you don't like it, don't watch the shit.
That's how I feel.
If you do like it, watch it and enjoy it. And don't watch it to break it down and decide for yourself what's wrong with it before you even see it half the time. It's too bad because the industry needs, look, the Coke Pepsi Monday Night Wars thing was really great for the industry because everybody, all boats rose with the high tide, right? That Monday Night War created. So, a real legitimate back and forth is a great thing. But when it gets reduced to, people unfollowing each other because you like one thing and I like another, I mean, damn, people, what the fuck?
We're all still just wrestling fans. Like, just get
That's it, man. Just enjoy it. If you see something you don't like, whatever. Tune in next week and look for something you do like. I mean, just Be a little more positive. It'll be better for the business.
I agree.
Speaking of NWO, Jason from New Jersey wants to know, if you had a chance to redo the NWO story, what was one thing you would change, if any?
Well, it should be obvious. It got too big too quick with not enough story behind it. It's not that it got too big. It's that it got too big without any story logic. There was no journey to becoming a part of the NWO. It was just one day you get a t-shirt. You're in, brother. Brother, you're in. Brother Brudai.
Right.
Without, and that's what happens when you just do things because it looks good on paper and you don't think about the story. It's so easy, especially at the time. You look at late 96, early 97, mid 97, we could almost do no wrong from a business perspective, from a short-term business perspective. Things were working so well, you could lay a giant egg in the middle of the ring and the egg would get over. It was just that hot, which is a great thing. But all of a sudden, you start hot-shotting without knowing you're hot-shotting because you're on a roll and it's working. Generally hot shots don't work, but when you're hot as hell and hot shots are actually working and the cash register's ringing, you're going to keep doing it because you like that sound. Ding, 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 ding. You love the sound of money, so you'll keep doing it. And then when the cash register stops ringing, you kind of go, well, why did that happen? And generally it's because the story suffered. Yeah, you were able to exploit it, took advantage of the run you were on, but you didn't build for it because there just wasn't enough meaning or logic or story behind it.
Did you know at the time that it was getting too big too quickly?
No. And again, now this will sound like I'm making an excuse for myself, and I don't mean to, because the lack of story will always be, the disease that killed the momentum, right? So that's never going to change,
Sure.
Regardless of whether I had a reason to do it or not. The reason for doing it, not that it's a good reason, but it was the reason, was because we were prepping to build another primetime show on Thunder. Mm-hmm. And the original idea was for Nitro to be NWO and for Thunder to be WCW. Well, in order for that to happen, NWO needed to have its own roster. WCW needed to have its own roster. WCW roster was already 4 times bigger than the NWO. So what do? Oh, we'll make NWO bigger. So we have 2 separate rosters. Well, somebody shot the horse, before we crossed the river, and we were never able to have the NWO Nitro show and the WCW Thunder show. So what did we get stuck with? An NWO roster with nowhere to go.
Makes sense. Sounded good on paper, but then in execution.
Well, the execution would have been fine had, and this goes into a whole nother boring conversation, but the change of plans occurred when in the middle, as we're approaching the river on the original plan, you've got a Time Warner, you've got an AOL, all of a sudden everybody goes, no. We realize that we gave you this budget, last year and we approved it, but now I know it's June, but we're going to change the budget anyway, 6 months into the year. And that's just all the plans changed. The entire deck got shuffled, not totally because of that, but in large part because of that. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of when the wheels fell off the wagon.
Sure, that makes sense. 2 more questions. Mario from Somerset wants to know, how personal did things get between you and Ric Flair during the WCW days? The storyline you had with him seemed insanely real at the time.
Wasn't that a beautiful thing? That was so great. It was very real. The backstory that was very public, unfortunately. Atlanta Times, Journal-Constitution, I should say, were writing stories about it because, Turner Broadcasting was suing Ric Flair for breach of contract. I was going to prevent him from going to work anywhere else until we settled our lawsuit, and then I was going to sue him for damages. That's a real thing. And Rick should have taken that seriously and personally. I would have been disappointed had he not. That was the purpose for doing it. And it was really to force a negotiation is what it really was. But nonetheless, on Rick's side of the equation, He thinks I'm trying to ruin him financially on my side of the equation. I think he's trying to ruin WCW by not fulfilling a contract and creating a precedent that I would have to live with and WCW would have to live with. I couldn't allow that to happen, just like Rick couldn't allow me to put him into a financial grave. So both of those situations were really real and unfortunate. But the beautiful part of it came when once we resolved those issues legitimately, not in a storyline sense, both Rick and I agreed to exploit it and turn a negative into a positive and turn it into a storyline. How could a storyline that was in the front page of business news sections in one of the nation's largest cities, how could you not take advantage of that backstory and turn it into a fictional version of such in WCW at that time? So it was perfect because it was real and believable. And the emotion, Rick is a very emotional person. He wears his emotions on his sleeve. So for Rick, whether he knew it or not at the time, he was a consummate professional method actor. He believed that character. He believed that story because he actually lived it. He didn't have to think back into his teens and 20s. He only had to look back 60 days and it was all real, scary. So that emotion was tangible and it's what made it work.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. The last question comes from Ryan from New Jersey. I think this is a fun one for you, Eric. He wants to know, what is your son up to these days? I was a big fan of his during his TNA run.
Garrett is still wrestling. In fact, I think he's going to be on Fight TV tonight. There's an event on Fight TV. It's coming from Florida somewhere, or maybe it's this weekend. I don't know. But he's still wrestling independents. He does it for fun, not for a living. He loves wrestling. He lives down in Florida, so he's able to, hit a lot of indie shows down in Florida. And he just does it on the weekends because he loves going out there and performing.
That's cool.
In his real life, he's in sales for a national construction supply company and doing very well professionally, but he's still got that little bit of an itch and goes out and, hangs it and bangs it in the ring, every other weekend.
Good for him. That's cool.
Absolutely. Well, Eric, this has been a ton of fun. We really appreciate you coming on. Obviously, you have to be living under a rock if you don't know where to find Eric Bischoff. But in case there's those one or two people out there, Eric, tell us where the viewers can find you.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at eBischoff, or you can find me every Monday morning at 6 a.m. wherever you find your favorite podcast on 83 Weeks.
Well, that is fantastic. That is fantastic. And guys and Eric, once again, thank you so much for coming on. Obviously, we appreciate the support that everybody and all of our fans give us each week, week in and week out. You can find us. Of course, you can catch all of our shows and content at TruExactRadio.com. You can catch the show on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, the Apple thing as well too.
Podcast app, yep.
The podcast app where you watch all your Apple Pods or see any of your shows. So, guys, appreciate the time. Eric, thanks so much for coming on, and we look forward to hopefully having you again in the future, sir.
You guys call me anytime. I had a blast, being on your show. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And you know how to find me.
Pleasure was ours.
Thank you.
All right, guys.